Hello and welcome to another episode of Unstuck with Hypnopunk Transformation with Edge. And today's show is entitled 10 Ways to Tell if Someone's Lying to You. And as the trader said, this may save you some money in your wallet, this may save your heart, and this may actually save your life. As I'm going to share with you 10 veritable ways to tell if somebody is lying to you coming up. As always, I'd like to give a big shout out for those who have left their 5-star reviews. You remember I love those on Google Play, on iTunes, on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you listen to this show. And that's what lets me know that the word is getting out there. So please do subscribe to this show, do give it a like, and do share so we can continue to grow this audience. On with the show. Number 1, look where their eyes are. Now, in modern societies, but been perpetuated by movies, is if someone's telling you the truth, they will look you dead in the eyes. In fact, a liar, if they're lying to you, will look you directly in the eyes, because this is what they've been programmed through media, through TV. A liar will look at you, will look everywhere, but they won't look you in the eyes. In fact, when we're retrieving information, as neurolinguistic programming has taught us, is we will look at different quadrants of our eyes to access certain memories, because we spatially store things. So when you ask someone a question, their eyes should move and should typically, most of the time, go what we call a transderivational search. Transcendental is a form of meditation. A transvariational search to retrieve that information. So if you ask someone a question, they do that and their eyes are darting around, it's probably a good idea, a good sign that they are actually retrieving information that could be stored inside their mind. So typically, someone who's telling the truth will look around to different quadrants of their eyes. Number 2, look at their head movement. Look at the person who is supposedly, could be, possibly lying. Look at their body positioning. Dr. Lillian Black, in one of her books, did a study on many people, and when they weren't telling the truth, what they would typically do is they'd move their head away, as if they were moving their head away from the lie that just came out of their mouth, or physically shifting their body. Now, any of these 10 ways to assess if someone's telling you a lie, if you take any one of them out of context, sometimes people will do any one or two of these out of context, and it could possibly be telling the truth. But we're looking at an overall complicit view. If they're doing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these things when they're telling you some information, the likelihood is they would be possibly, probably, more than likely lying to you. If they do any more than 3 of these, I'd possibly postulate to you. And what Dr. Lillian Black said is, again, it's as if those words came out of someone's mouth. They realised it was a lie, and they needed to get as much distance physically, so they'll either recall their head away from those words that are out there in the ether, or their body, to get distance between them and the ugly, dirty, nasty lie. So look at people's body posture after they make a statement. Number 3, look at the eyelids. Now, typically, when somebody's telling the truth in normal conversation, they will blink their eyes 5 to 6 times per minute. That's about once every 12 seconds. Sharon Leon wrote a book on lying and telling if people were lying. And what she did in one of her studies in assessing people was realize that somebody who is in the process of lying and is aware that they're lying, they will start to blink very slow, but then they will blink too much. So they'll blink slower to begin with than that 5 to 6 times per minute, or once every 12 seconds. But then as they're coming to the tail end of it, they will blink way too much, 10, 15, 20 times. Possibly even more in a minute period. So it's another way, looking at people's blink rate, to tell if they are being duplicitous, which is a lovely word for lying. Number 4, typically somebody who's lying will fidget a lot. But they could also be anxious, they could also be nervous. But specifically, liars tend to fidget around with their nose or their mouth, oftentimes covering the mouth as if their mouth is betraying to you or to them that they are indeed lying. So look at people's hand position in connection with their mouth or their nose when they're telling what you think may be a lie, and their fidgeting rate. If they're typically a fidgeter, you know them, then you need to adjust accordingly. But if they're fidgeting more when they're making a statement that you think is a lie than they typically would, and you've calibrated them, if you know them, typically before, that's another sign that something isn't right in Denver. Number 5, words and gestures don't seem to match. It's almost as if, imagine I'm saying yes, but I'm turning my head to indicate no. Or I'm doing the opposite of that, is I'm saying no, but at the same time I'm nodding my head. People's gestures not correlating with the words they're saying. In neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP for short, we call this a lack of congruence. Meaning they're saying all the right words, but there's just something that doesn't feel right, something that doesn't add up right. At least 90 to 93% of all communication has nothing to do with the content, i.e. the words that are being used. Approximately 55% of communication is non-verbal, i.e. body languages, gestures and so forth. And about 27% is the timbre of our words, the pitch of our words. And only about 7% of communication is the actual content, the actual words, the syntax of words that we're using specifically. So by calibrating somebody, if you have the opportunity to, and then looking, when you get that gut feeling that something isn't right, that their words are not matching their gestures, that's another telltale sign that somebody may not be telling you the truth. Number 6, watch their hands. Do they touch their face a lot? Are they picking at their lips? Are they kind of cusping at their ears? That's another telltale sign that the person who's lying is doing this. Now, they're probably not doing it consciously, they're probably not aware of it, but sometimes the harder someone tries to appear that they're not fidgeting or they're telling the truth, the more of their gestures and their non-conscious movements will betray what's really going on inside for them. And the reason for picking the lips, picking the face, there's been some studies on this. It's almost as if they're kind of trying to mutate those words, if you are, that are coming out. They're not true. So they're kind of mumbling a little bit, and they're kind of, as I'm kind of picking up my lips a little bit now as I'm doing that. Maybe I'm not telling the truth here. But they're kind of picking at the lips, picking at those words that are coming out. As a sign, in poker, what they would call a tell. So all these wonderful tools are great, again, if you're playing poker and you've got to read, you've been playing the same people for a time now, and you've calibrated what their natural responses are to you and to the game, and then what their responses are when they've got a good hand and their responses when they've got a bad hand. This is one of the reasons I'm banned from about 27 casinos in Las Vegas and 3 in Canada. Number 7, oftentimes liars, when you ask them to recite their story or their lie, and you ask for more detail, typically more and more detail will come out, and the story will change over and over again. And it may only change a little bit, not a big amount, not an amount that you see straight away and you're like, oh, that was a huge change. I mean, every time you ask them to recite the story, it changes a little bit. Much like if you had a Word document and you just made one change to it, like you took out a capital T or you took out a period in it, and then you saved it. It would only change a little bit, but over time, if every time you open that Word document, you edited it, over time, when you can compare the original document with the latest generation, you'd see they'd almost be completely different documents. Yes, the content may be somewhat similar, but so much of the context has changed. So that's another telltale sign. Oftentimes a great way around this when dealing with someone that you feel is lying to you is ask them to recite the story, their lie, that you believe to be a lie at least, out of context. So ask them to recite it backwards, the lie, the story, or pick on different points and ask him to recite it there, rather than it being chronological. Typically, when someone's telling the truth, they'll be able to tell it forward, back, and they'll be able to recite certain pieces of it. Whereas a liar has to consistently think, well, what's the lie? How did it end? What was in the middle? What was that step before? And it takes them more and more time to be able to sell that to you, that that is the truth. Number 8, dry mouth. And what FBI agents have noticed, and this guy called, I believe it is David Narano, who is a retired FBI agent in America, written many books on body languages and telling if people are lying or not, because that was his job for many years, interviewing criminals essentially. And one of the things that he noticed was typically when people are lying, their mouth dries up because it's a fight or flight response or freeze response, and they have what police would call cottonmouth. Their mouth will dry. They'll be licking their lips a lot, trying to get saliva into their mouth because they realise they are lying, and there is a change in the heart rate variable, and there is a release oftentimes of when someone goes into fight or flight, when they know that they're lying, as the heart beats higher, there's a shot of adrenaline oftentimes, which will often bring in that fear anxiety response, which causes the mouth to be dry. So look for signs that they're sipping more water, drinking more drinks as they're talking to you. They're swallowing more, they're licking their lips, they're playing around with their tongue like Dave Meltzer. Stuff like that's another way to look. And again, no one of these things in and of itself proves in any way, shape or form that someone's lying. But I think if someone's demonstrating 3 or above of these 10 telltale signs that someone's lying to you in a conversation, then there is a strong possibility that they are not telling you the truth. Number 9, aggression, pointing, raising their voice. Someone who lies sometimes, and you call them on their lie, they'll raise their voice. It's almost like they want to bully you into submission. They're pointing their finger at you. Remember, when you point a finger at someone, you've got 3 fingers pointing back. I had to count that for a moment. My math isn't great. I wasn't sure if I should add the thumb or not. But it's almost like a diversionary point, that the angrier they'll get, the more they'll raise their voice, the more they'll be pointing at you to almost give you that fight, flight or flee response or freeze response right there, to make you forget about the lie. So if they're getting over aggressive for no particular reason, that's another sign. Now, they might get defensive if they're telling the truth and you're asking them again. That's a difference from someone being really up in your face and up in your grill. Let's look out for that. Number 10, the 10th way to know if someone's being duplicitous to you is their breathing changes. Perhaps if you calibrated in the beginning, they were a mouth breather, but later on they become a nose breather. Typically when someone's lying, their voice fades a little bit and it distances out a little bit. Oftentimes they'll be speaking from their chest because of that fight, flight or flee response, as opposed to from their tummy. So look for any direct big movement changes in their breath. So that's the 10 ways to know if someone's lying to you. But here are some bonuses. Here are a couple of bonuses right now to over deliver to you. Another way of telling if someone is lying to you is, are they collar tugging? Are they neck scratching? This is another sign that leading psychologists have noticed when people have been put under pressure in study situations to tell lies, that they'll pick at their neck, they'll scratch their neck, they've got a collar, they'll tug that away as if they're not getting enough air in it, as if their temperature's going off, because oftentimes their temperature will go up and there will be a colour change in their face as well when they're not telling the truth. Another bonus is, and this was again Joe Navarro, I think I called him John Navarro earlier on, but Joe Navarro, Navarro, the FBI agent. What he noticed was oftentimes in his interviews with criminals, when someone's lying, they'll hold on to a wall, they'll hold on to a chair, because they almost want to steady their body, because their lies have made them a little bit unstable in their mind. It's almost like there's a physiological reaction that their body becomes a little bit stable. True or false, it's a psychological thing, that they'll need to hold on to something to ground them a little bit as they are telling you the lie. Another bonus is oftentimes people will turn away a little bit while they're lying to you. And this was put forth by Mr. Body Language himself, Adam Pierce, who wrote a book with his wife on body language and on lying. One of the Bibles on body language and lying, actually. And he postulated, he noticed, actually working with people, that people would lie, would oftentimes turn their body away a little bit, or they would turn their head to the side a little bit. Think of George Clooney in ER, or almost any of his movies, where he tilts his head to the side like a dog, or it rotates or someone will rotate their body a little bit, almost again like they're trying to not come at you straight, they're coming at you from a weird angle with their body as well as their lies. Something I noticed as well from my studies in kinesiology is once I've set up some muscle testing with somebody, let's say it's their arm and it's extended laterally out to them, and I'll ask them a question like the truth, like what's your name? And, for me, I'd say my name's Luke. Their arm would be out laterally, and I would take 2 fingers and I would push down. And oftentimes I'd only be able to push down a couple of inches, and their arm would spring up. It was very, very strong. Their arm against 2 of my fingers, typically their arm's going to win most of the time when they're telling the truth. However, when I get them to lie, and I get them to say, "Oh, my name's Sue," again resisting me, but by applying the same pressure with my 2 fingers just above their wrist. If you imagine that their palm was facing down and their arm was out laterally 90 degrees to their side, their arm would go down like a ton of bricks immediately, even under the instruction of stay strong, do not let your arm drop. Neurophysiologically, most of the time, and most of my clients, when I get them to deliberately tell a lie to prove this point, they are weak. When I get them to tell the truth, they are strong. So it's kind of hardwired into us. Now, I'm not suggesting that your partner, or perhaps somebody at work, or somebody just new, a customer potentially, that you could ask them to put their arm out and then muscle test them. That probably isn't going to be the most discreet way of knowing, but perhaps with a partner or a child, you could put some of these gently into practice with the muscle testing. Again, not foolproof, but in my experiences of working with thousands of clients, probably 90 to 95% of the time, when they lie, when they're aware of telling a lie, even under the instruction of resist, they will physically be weaker, and when they tell the truth, they will be physically stronger. And one extra Brucey bonus for you right now is how to tell if somebody is lying to you over the telephone. Would you like to know that? Even if you couldn't see them, to know if someone's lying to a potential client, potential partner, potential business partner, or romantic partner, if they're lying to you over the telephone. Listen to their voice. Calibrate how their voice traditionally sounds. And then oftentimes what happens, especially over the telephone when you can't see somebody, because remember that most communication is not the actual words of context, it's the timbre of the words, the pitch of the words, is listen to if their tone changes, their timbre, how they resonate certain words. Also notice if they don't finish phrases or finish sentences. That's another indication that they may not be telling the truth over the telephone. But you do have to calibrate oftentimes before, if you can, of what's just a natural way of being. Are they scattered? Are they all over the place with their voice going up and their voice going down like that? Or are they typically more steady most of the time? It's always good to calibrate, because start of calibration is much like using Google Maps or any kind of map. You need to know where you are in order to know how long and trek your journey to where you need to go. So you might need to know where you need to go, but if you don't know where you are right now, then you can't plug that into your Google Maps or your GPS system, because you need a start point as well as an end point. That's why it's really important to calibrate people. Basically, what calibration is a fancy word of just noticing how people are naturally when they come in to see you at the beginning of an interaction where they're most likely telling the truth in a normal, natural state of being, for want of a better word. If there's something in your life that's been causing you to feel stuck, be that in your health, be that in your relationships, be that in your career, and you're not quite sure how to fix it or where to turn, but it's getting to a point where you've got to do something about it because it's causing you some kind of pain, be that physical, be that mental, be that emotional, then please do contact me on mail@LUKEnosis.com. Mail, mail at LUKENOSIS, LUKENOSIS.com, and request a 30-minute complimentary Unstuck session with me, either over the telephone or over some kind of video messaging. And please understand, this is not a free therapy session, this is not a hypnosis session, anything like that. It's an opportunity to have me in your corner for 30 minutes to brainstorm some ways that potentially I can help you to pull yourself out of that hole that you're in, to take your life to the next level. Always believe.